Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Lord, thanks for this day. We pray that you'll bless our time together today, and always help us, Lord, to keep in mind your return and how it ought to shape the way we live and what we do. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, today I'm just going to call this initiatives. You'll see a little bit about that. The one thing I noticed, this is what we talk about each week, this convergence of things that are happening. This is the grid that I use. By the way, I'm going to be speaking in Scotland in about 2 weeks, the 16th through the 18th at the Moriel Conference in, I want to say, Grantmore, Scotland. Go to moriel.org. You can get I guess I had to figure out where I'm going so I can show up there. There's a possibility I might speak someplace else up in Scotland while I'm there. Just pray that comes together if that's supposed to be. And so some of the things I'm talking about today, I'm going to talk about, I think, in more depth at the Moriel Conference. The one thing I've noticed this week, these are the things we talk about: acceleration, convergence, logistics, understanding things are going to happen more quickly. They're going to be happening all at the same time. There's also a logistics aspect. And if I remember, I'll talk a little bit more about that today. And then understanding, which is partly this verse in Daniel chapter 12 that I've been talking about for a couple of years now, almost every Sunday, that as we get closer to the end, these things, how these are going to play out, are going to become clearer. We're going to have a better understanding. Daniel didn't understand. And he was told, Daniel, it's not for you. Seal them up till the time of the end. The wise in the end will understand if they're in the book, if they're studying the book. So we try to pay attention to these things. This is a graphic. I think I used it for the first time here last week. We have these things. Jesus referred to them as birth pangs in Matthew chapter 24. And I believe that the birth pangs do relate to the first 4 seals at least. But as you know, in a birth pang, you have, I've not had a birth pang. But as I told people, it's like I have passed a kidney stone once, but I hear it's worse, but I'm not gonna quibble about that. Because it's really tiny when it comes out. It's not like this big baby. But as we get, it's a birthing process. We need to remember this isn't going to be a C-section. This whole thing in the end times, as they unfold all the way up till the return of the Lord, it's a birth process, and the birth pangs are going to get more and more severe as we get closer. And so that's what I've tried to depict in this graph, is that the seals open, but that there's a progression. They don't, for example, the first seal says that the person on the white horse rides forth conquering and to conquer. So it doesn't mean that when the seal opens, everything related to that seal happens all at once. This is my understanding. This is the way I look at it. It's going to unfold over time. Same way with the other 3 horsemen of the first 4 seals. It's going to unfold over time, and there's an acceleration and there's an exponential aspect to it. I'm going to play later today. I'm going to talk some about artificial intelligence again, since it's such a big topic. And in that, you'll see the discussion from the head of NVIDIA. Very interesting discussion about exponential growth. And this is what we see happening in artificial intelligence. So let me jump into this. Okay, and I'm going to jump out of here for just a second, because I see that these things are not in order. Give me 1 second here. I apologize. Boy, I'll tell you, it's so hard to get this organized, especially when you I keep working on it up until the time that until I present, and that's sometimes a problem. Okay, I think I can... Well, let's start off with this. So this is a very good, I can't remember I ran across this on a website, but it referred to reliable sources. Now, it's interesting. CNN uses the term reliable sources, which is kind of like, how do they know? Or how do they know what's reliable? I mean, they're not reliable, but they're going to use it. And so you always understand that the left it's a total propaganda machine. There are a few examples that I'm going to give you this week where these stories come out, you read the story, everybody talks about the story, and then what happens? Immediately then the whole mainstream media they'll either do one of two things. They'll ignore the story completely. They won't even talk about it. You'll only find it through alternative sources and a lot of digging. Or if once the story gets out there, the only time the mainstream media will deal with the story is to completely debunk it. And they do that through fact checking and that type of thing. So this is a story this is Oliver Darcy at Reliable Sources at CNN, writing on Wednesday this week, and it's talked about the war on woke. And so down here you see this from the Drudge Report headline, War on Pride, Anti-Target Rap Tops iTunes, Revolt on Chick-fil-A, Bud Light sales down 30%, gays leaving Florida. So what CNN did was they took all of these things that are happening that are true. People are they've had it with this left woke agenda being shoved in our face everywhere you go. You go to the kids section at Target and it's shoved in your face. People go to their school boards, it's shoved in your face. They shove these things in your kids' faces in classes. And it goes against what Christians really believe. So you have a couple of options. You take your kids out of school is probably the only option. And by the way, now you're starting to see all these stories. For example, there's stories on the Duggars. Was that their name? There was some show they had, 19 kids or something like that. And they've had a lot of problems. And they were very legalistic. My understanding is they followed the Bill Gothard Institute on Basic Youth Conflicts paradigm. And there's a lot of problems with Bill Gothard that have come out. And so now they're saying, see, they're all like Bill Gothard. Even though they're not all like Bill Gothard. And who hasn't had problems with their kids? Well, my parents didn't, but that's the exception, right? At least I didn't think they did. But so Oliver Darcy writes, and he starts off with this: June is upon us. Insiders Union threatens a strike. The News Media Alliance names a new chief. Project Veritas sues James O'Keefe. Meta protests legislation in California. OpenAI tries to stop hallucinations. Brian Kilmeade zings Donald Trump for attacking Kayleigh McEnany. Ted Lasso appears to end, and more. But first, AI. So they go on and they're going to talk about AI and the war on woke. And so here's what this article says. Prepare yourself for a Pride Month imbued with callous intolerance. Now, part of that is a response to, I believe, Glenn Beck did a program last week, and I think he had Ted Lindsay on. My understanding is Ted Lindsay is an atheist. And Ted Lindsay was talking about how Christians should respond to all this stuff being shoved in their face. Now, I don't know if I need an atheist non-Christian telling me how to act as a Christian. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. But what they said was, you've got to stand up against this stuff. So now, here comes the mainstream media with the response to say, prepare yourself for a Pride Month imbued with callous intolerance. And what had been said on the Glenn Beck program was, you're going to see a month of June where this stuff is going to be shoved in your face like you've never seen before. And I think it's exactly true. So do you see what the mainstream media does? They immediately get their little propagandists like this Oliver Darcy guy, whoever he is, and he comes out and he says, this is the way he starts his article, prepare for a Pride Month imbued with callous intolerance. So what have they done? They've shifted everything. It's propaganda. So they will always accuse you of being what they are. Listen to what he says. Fueled by right-wing media personalities and institutions like Fox News, by the way, which is celebrating Pride Month, so I don't know that I would consider it conservative or right-wing. Conservatives are, it's just like anything else. You kind of have to pick and choose in this day and age. Conservatives are waging a ferocious war on companies that express support for the LGBTQ community, with hostilities against the celebration of gay rights swelling to levels not seen in many years. In effect, the supposedly anti-cancel culture crowd is leading the summer's biggest cancel culture campaign. So in other words, they do this all the time. They're gonna boycott this, and then if the right turns around and does it, then look at, they're a bunch of hypocrites and that type of thing. In recent weeks, right-wing media has smeared and incited boycotts against Bud Light and Target, two jumbo American brands that have been thrust into the center of the toxic culture wars. So now the left is big corporations are great, right? As long as they're doing what they are. I don't have time to get into it today, but you need to understand that that there has been this, we've talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, woke, ESG, and that type of thing. Those are all being pushed by these big companies like BlackRock. BlackRock controls trillions of dollars of net wealth in the world. And it's bigger than a lot of countries, bigger than most countries. And they're pushing these things. And so what happens is if corporations want to stay on public exchanges and that type of thing, they're being required to do this diversity, equity, and inclusion thing. So that's why, for example, a company, I think it's publicly traded, Chick-fil-A, will hire a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. Now, how far they go with that is up for debate. So I don't know that just saying, well, they have a DEI guy and therefore Chick-fil-A is woke and you should avoid them at all costs. I don't know. Listen, you're not going to find perfect companies anywhere. That's one thing we need to do. So, but you just have to decide what is going to govern your conscience. So anyway, so in Bud Light, they came out with this ridiculous campaign with this transgender, this guy who's pretending to be a girl, who's pretending to use feminine hygiene products, who's complaining about his feminine period of the month, time of the month cramps. I've seen this, and their sales are down 30%. Target's lost like $11 billion in market capitalization value. Great, I'm happy for that. And it's interesting, we did go into Target when we were on vacation out in Rapid City, South Dakota, and the place was packed. It was rainy that day. I guess when it rains in Rapid City, everybody in the world goes to Target. You couldn't find a place in the parking lot. It was crazy. But anyway, both companies have been relentlessly attacked over their show of public support for the LGBTQ community. And even, reliable sources at CNN doesn't get it right because everybody knows. Just ask Justin Trudeau, baby Trudeau. It's LGBTQIA SA plus minus or something like that. They keep adding. I call it the alphabet mafia. North Face, Kohl's, and Chick-fil-A have also come under assault. And Disney, of course, has been an endless punching bag since it spoke out against the so-called Don't Say Gay bill in Florida last year. In the right-wing media universe in which millions of Americans firmly reside, these companies have been portrayed as woke and evil corporations seeking to groom children with radical, even satanic gender ideology that will corrupt their brains and ultimately lead to the destruction of society. So look, congratulations to him. He got it right. That's exactly right. That's exactly what we believe. It's demonic. And it does play into this thing that we talk about, the end times. The attacks have put companies in the uncomfortable position of standing up for the values of their own employees and the public writ large against a relentless volley of threats of mass boycotts, lost revenue, and ultimately long-term brand harm. And then I started seeing these things like, oh, they even had threats against the employees. But when I dug into those threats, you know what the threats against the employees, where they were coming from? They were coming from the Alphabet Mafia trans activists who were saying, Target, if you take this thing out, we're coming after you too. And so it wasn't the people that are against this stuff being shoved in their face. It was the trans activists who were coming out. At Oxford Union, there was a debate. And at this Oxford Union debate, they violently attacked I believe she's a left-wing professor. She's a feminist, but she says, look, by doing this, by having guys participate in female sports, biological males participate in female sports, you're wiping out female chances for advancement, with which I agree. So what could ultimately come out of all of this is they just have a basketball team at a college, and the girls can, females can come out and compete for that. Now, how many do you think are going to make the team? There's a study that they do, they track this on one website, where they show the world record times for women in the 100 meters, like Olympic champions and world records and that type of thing. And then they show the state records for like the California high school boys at ages 16 and 17. The times of the best ones, all of which beat the world record of the females, the 16 and 17-year-old high school boys. Because it doesn't mean that they're not great athletes. The women are not great athletes and deserving of praise and honor and all of that sort of thing. It's just that I know this is really tough to grasp. Men and women are different. There's a continuum, but by and large, you can speak in generalities. So listen to what this guy says. Written in black and white, the attacks look deranged. He's talking about attacks on the activists. But it is precisely what some of the loudest and most influential right-wing media figures are promoting to their large followings, with new self-generated outrage cycles generated daily. It isn't quite QAnon, but it's close, and is being fed to the GOP base in broad daylight. You don't have to go to the dark corners of the internet to find this style of crazed commentary. It's available each day via mainstream right-wing outlets. In many cases, prominent personalities are not even trying to be secretive about their end goals they perhaps would have been done in years past. In fact, they were saying the quiet part out loud. The Daily Wire's Matt Walsh, one of the leading purveyors of anti-Alphabet Mafia rhetoric in the United States, has explicitly stated that the aim is to make the open embrace of the Alphabet Mafia community harmful to brands. By the way, if you want to go to Twitter, Daily Wire and Matt Walsh have posted the full version of the What is a Woman video that Matt Walsh did. It's pretty good. The last I heard, it was up around 9 or 10 million views. Initially, though, even Twitter, who claims to be free speech, was sort of shadow banning it and blocking it on the grounds that it was harmful and offensive content. Because there were a couple situations where somebody misgendered somebody in the movie. They called them a female when they really were a male, or vice versa. So here's the Human Rights Campaign, which is one of the big proponents of this, and they're pushing, they score corporations on how well they're doing on this. Over 100 leading Alphabet Mafia advocacy organizations and allies call on Target and business community to reject coordinated extremist anti-LGBTQ attacks. It's time for companies to speak up and support LGBTQ plus people. Here's the the thing that occurred at the Oxford Union in a debate. And they had a debate. And they were saying allowing biological men access to female-only spaces is crazy. And everybody went berserk, including some people down there, which they don't even do a good job of pretending to be female in many cases. But it was noted there, this is from the Times of London, that a lot of people were too afraid to speak up. They just didn't say anything. So now I need to go here to another. So here's an article. This comes from World Magazine, but it's also published in local newspapers just this week. Largest U.S. children's hospital to stop transgender procedures. That's Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. And Christopher Rufo reported on this maybe a couple months ago, maybe last year. And immediately what did Texas Children's Hospital come out and say? Well, we're not doing surgery on minors. And then somebody found on the website a doctor who talked about doing this surgery, mutilation surgery, I don't know how else to describe it, on an 11-year-old. So what did they do? They took her bio down. Like, we don't know how to use archive.org. And by the way, if you ever see somebody take something down, try to get the URL, the web address, take it, copy it, and then paste it, go to archive.org and paste it in and you'll get like all the time that web page was saved. That's what a lot of us did when BLM. Boy, there's a scandal involving BLM. Like, they took in millions of dollars and nothing really made it to hardly anything made it to end users. But the leadership got paid millions of dollars. But BLM had on their website one of their stated purposes, which was to completely upend the traditional family structure. Well, they got a lot of heat for that, and for good reason. And guess what they did? They took it off their website. But thank the Lord, somebody had the insight to do archive.org, the web archive, and you were able to go back and find what it was that they said. But the mainstream media acts like, well, they never said that. What are you talking about? How do you know that the web archive is reliable? But they use it all the time, too. So it's just this back and forth. So what Christopher Rufo did was he got a copy of the email the president, the head, the CEO of Texas Children's Hospital that he had sent out to the people at Texas Children's Hospital. I'm just going to read a little bit of this. I wanted to share an update related to Senate Bill 14. That's a Texas bill that was banning this type of surgery, which will prohibit procedures and prescription treatments for gender transitioning, gender reassignment, and gender dysphoria. Now look, if they weren't doing this to minors, right, they wouldn't be worried about it. If it's stopping them from doing something that they're not doing, then why are they saying anything? The passage of this bill, which will go into effect on September 1, 2023, has clear and direct programmatic implications for our patients, families, faculty, staff, and care teams. Over the next few months, Texas Children's Hospital will modify the gender-affirming care we offer to comply with the new law. So they're doing things that would be against wrong under the new law. So they have to transition out of them. But when this first, I have a pretty good memory, when this first came out, Christopher Rufo brought it out and some others, it's like, oh, we don't do that. The Bush 41's wife's name? Barbara Bush. The Barbara Bush Children's Center up in New England. They were doing it. They came out and said, well, we're not doing that. Oh, yeah, really? The transition we will embark on is going to be immensely heart-wrenching, but we will lead through this adversity and navigate these next steps together with grace, love, and compassion like we always do. I understand that there will be many viewpoints and opinions related to this matter, but I want to remind everyone that our mission is to create a healthier future for all children. And I want them to address, I see video after video of people who've had these surgeries who regret it. And they make up the statistics. So this is the president came out with this proclamation on May 31st, right after Texas Children says, okay, we're going to stop. We're going to comply with the Texas law. By the way, I believe in this thing. He says that what they're going to do is we're going to refer people to states where these laws don't exist. Wait a minute. I thought you weren't doing this type of surgery. Oh, but you're going to refer them to places that are. I guess the question is, well, it's a rhetorical question. What happened to the medical profession? What happened to the legal profession? The firm that I was with, I've told you this, they sponsored a CLE with drag queens and everything down at the State House, in the State House Rotunda, last year before I left the firm. You can find it on the internet. We were one of the co-sponsors along with some other big law firms. No, nobody came to me and asked me and said, hey, are you okay with this? Because they probably didn't want to get the answer that I would give. And I can tell you, I know and these are secular companies. It's come back to me and said, we would never go to that law firm if they sponsor something like that. And they should, that's their choice. So here is a proclamation, this is from the president, on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex Pride Month. They keep adding these descriptors to it in 2023. And listen to this is what the president said. And by the way, I'm exercising mercy and grace to you. I'm not playing you the clip of him talking. So I just want you to know that. Today, our nation faces another inflection point. In 2023 alone, state and local legislatures have already introduced over 600 hateful laws targeting the LGBTQI plus community. Books about the alphabet people are being banned from libraries. Transgender youth in over a dozen states have had their medically necessary health care banned. This man, do you understand? This guy is so evil. He is evil. And by the way, I don't say that about a lot of politicians. So you got to be really bad to kind of get my goat on this one. And he gets my goat. And I watch the hearings in Congress about how whistleblowers come from the IRS and say, well, we were investigating his son and we were told to stop by the Department of Justice. The whole system is corrupt. And so listen, I don't know if it gets turned around. I hope it does, but I'm just telling you what I'm really hoping for is that it doesn't get turned around, it gets destroyed. It gets burned up. And a true system of peace and justice is instituted in the world. Amen. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm cheerleading for that. Transgender youth in over a dozen states have had their medically necessary health care banned. Homophobic and transphobic vitriol spewed online has spilled over into real life as armed hate groups intimidate people at pride marches and drag performances. Where are the videos of this? He is a liar. I believe God's grace is wide and broad. I don't know how a person like this gets saved. I really don't. Okay? I'm getting totally off track here. I should have read this stuff before I came up here a little bit more because now I'm really ticked off. Pride marches and drag performances, intimidate people at pride marches and drag performances, and threaten doctors' offices and children's hospital that offer care to the LGBTQI plus community. Our hearts are heavy with grief for the loved ones we have lost to anti-alphabet people violence. Listen, people have done bad things, okay? But I'm watching what's going on, and I can tell you that this guy is, the gracious thing is to say he's demented and he's lost his mind. The truth is probably far worse. This is from the National Health Service. This is from the Times of London. NHS trans surgery damaged my body forever. It's not safe. Does Joe Biden give one whit of care about somebody who's been permanently damaged for life? No, he doesn't care about that. It's all about power. This is the cover. Now, I'm going to tell you that I've cropped this cover. This is the cover of Glamour magazine. Trans pregnant, proud. Men really can get pregnant. And it's everywhere. This is from the Jerusalem Post, Friday. The Jerusalem Pride March is a sacred event. And even laws are sometimes struck down. Trump-appointed judge rejects Tennessee's anti-drag law as too broad and too vague. And so, so here's a judge who's actually like applying the constitutional principles, that the law has to be, because it might be restricting free speech, it has to be very specific. And this one's too vague in what it's banning. So he says it's unconstitutional. And the judge might be correct. And then the flags everywhere. So it's just prepare yourself. It's only June 4th, and there are 26 days to go. Okay. Well, let's go on to this. Let's talk a little bit about AI. This is a very interesting topic, the way this is unfolding. It is very, very concerning. So here's an article from yesterday's Times of London. And you'll see here there's a little inset there that says military fear rogue attack. And so what happened was I don't know if you saw the reports this week, that there was, at first the way it was presented was there was a real life artificial intelligence exercise using drones where the drones were controlled by artificial intelligence, they were programmed, and their goal was to destroy a particular target, but that a human operator intervened to turn them away from their target, and the drones then turned and took out the human operator. Now, the way I first heard it was this is something that actually happened. Then it became, well, it was just an exercise. Now it's, well, some military colonel, this is from The Guardian, U.S. Air Force denies running simulation in which AI drone killed operator. Denial follows colonel saying the drone used highly unexpected strategies to achieve its goal in a virtual test. So it went from the way I first heard it as a real test to a virtual test to we didn't even do it. And this happens so much in the media now. It's like Texas Children's Hospital. They say, well, we never did those surgeries. Now they're complaining, well, we're going to have to refer the people that fall under the law out for surgery to another state where it's allowed. And there's sanctuary states popping up all over the place. Washington, Oregon, California, Maine has now instituted laws like this. And it's going to be difficult to determine what's true. This is a good article from Robert Henderson at the City Journal. It's a journal I would highly recommend, even if you can only read a few free articles a month. The Cadre and the Code, How Artificial Intelligence Could Supplement and Reinforce Our Emerging Thought Police. And it's clear, I've showed you all those organizations that are involved to censor speech of people that they don't agree with. That's all they're doing. They're not out there trying to get to the truth. They're out there trying to control the narrative. This is what this whole world is going to be like as we approach closer and closer to the return of the Lord, is there's going to be this massive worldwide effort to control the narrative. I don't think I included the picture, but I just received in my Twitter feed from Songping Ank. Says China, it's a picture of a truck driving down the street in China with like a video billboard on the side with a person's name, identification, who the person is and everything. And here's what it says: China names and shames citizens with an ID social credit rating by displaying their faces, IDs, addresses on billboards on LED trucks driving around the town for all to see. This also alerts who you may want to stay away from lest your social credit score goes down. And I'm hearing stories of people, because there's concern about the financial system. I don't have any slides on this. Listen, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not a prophet. There are a lot. I've been concerned about the financial system for 20 years, because at some point the system has to be completely imploded, exploded, and reset. There's just no other way to do it. The question is, when is that time? But I don't know when it's going to happen. The financial system continues to be fragile, in my opinion. Germany is in a major recession. Part of the reason for Germany being in a major recession is that they've completely destroyed their ability to produce energy that drives their economy. I talked to you last year a lot about BASF, one of the largest, I think has the largest chemical plant in the world, is essentially in the process of shutting down. When that plant shuts down, they have to completely rebuild it to get it back operational. It's not like they can shut it down, then when everything comes back to what it used to be, they'll just start it back up. They would have to completely reconstruct it. So to shut it down is to destroy it. It's the same thing as happening in our economy, our energy structure. Dave Walsh, at Dave Walsh Energy on Getter, I would highly recommend that you follow him. Hopefully, if there's a change in administration, he may end up being the energy secretary, which I think would be a very, very good thing. But he talks about the fact that we're destroying what we need as a base for the energy system, which is continuous load output. In other words, an energy plant that operates all the time to provide power to the grid. There are warnings all over the country about potential outages this summer on electricity. That's because they're switching over to solar and wind. And we think, oh, solar and wind, this is going to be great. Everything's going to be great. I'm going to talk about it, the green agenda, in just a moment, because I think this is part of the end times thing. Just because it's so insane. So in Germany, they're having a recession because they're shutting down their nuclear power plants. Although now I see some people on the left are saying, well, if we could deal with the waste, nuclear power might be okay, because I think some people are realizing that we're going to completely destroy the economy. We're going to be living in the Stone Age. And so some people that, have a view of Revelation or Ezekiel that come with horses, they'll come with horses because the world will be destroyed for mechanical armies. Could be. As somebody would say, they're called the four horsemen of the apocalypse, not the four tanks, diesel-powered tanks. and now there's a fifth one, which is propaganda. So I've used this slide before. So, but a lot of this is being used to drive the narrative. Now there's a company called NVIDIA, and I get these emails like I have a lot of money to invest or something like that. But there was a guy saying, listen, if you want to invest, you need to invest in emerging companies. And one of the companies that he talked about was NVIDIA. And if you bought NVIDIA 2 months ago, you're probably buying an RV. You're one of the guys who can buy an RV now. And they're cheap because everybody's trying to sell their RVs. And so they talk about the $1 trillion company that started at Denny's. Now, a lot of you may not have ever heard of NVIDIA, but they make video chips. I have an NVIDIA chip in my computer. And it's gone up in value $650 billion since last October. So this guy says, buy. It's always interesting. The stock experts always say, buy the ones that are going to really go up in value. Oh, well, I didn't know that was how you made money. And he says, buy emerging markets. But then I also saw another article, I think in the Wall Street or Financial Times, that says, you got to be careful because these things they're going to, 9 out of 10 of them are going to fail. I get these Twitter threads of people who are talking about different aspects of artificial intelligence. I will confess, I downloaded my first artificial intelligence update for Photoshop. I've not used it yet. I'm not sure I want to use it, but it's on my computer. But they're like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 different things that you can use hacks to do. I saw one this morning where a guy, he spent $40 or $100 on ChatGPT tokens. He created a website and everything, and now he's making like $5,000 a month. And everything was generated by artificial intelligence. He told it what to do, and it did it. Now, as someone who does not use it, I'm not surprised. I figured that this was coming, but it came so quickly. So I'm going to play about a 7-8 minute clip of the head of NVIDIA speaking at a conference this week. And I just want you to listen to what he's talking about, some of the examples that he's using, and what's the downside, what's the bad side of it, as well as the good side. Because he's gung-ho. Of course, he might have been worth $300 million a couple months ago. Now he's probably worth over $1 billion if he had that much stock. So just listen to this and then look for the examples he uses of exponential growth.
In 5 years, we improved the computer graphics by 1,000 times. In 5 years, using artificial intelligence and accelerated computing. Moore's law is probably currently running at about 2 times. 1,000 times in 5 years. 1,000 times in 5 years is 1 million times in 10. We're doing the same thing in artificial intelligence. Now, the question is, what can you do when your computer is 1 million times faster? I have a lot to tell you, very little time, so let's get going. Ray tracing, simulating the characteristics of light and materials, is the ultimate accelerated computing challenge. 6 years ago, we demonstrated for the very first time rendering this scene in less than few hours. Let's take a look at the difference in just 5 years. Roll it. This is running on CUDA GPUs 6 years ago, rendering this beautiful image that would have otherwise taken a couple of hours on a CPU. So this was a giant breakthrough already. Enormous speed up running on accelerated computing. And then we invented the RTX GPU. Run it, please. computer graphics ray tracing is now possible in real time. AI made it possible for us to do that. Everything that you saw would have been utterly impossible without AI. For every single pixel we render, we use AI to predict 7 others. For every pixel we compute, AI predicted 7 others. The amount of energy we save, the amount of performance we get is incredible. We used AI to render this scene. We're going to also use AI to bring it alive. Today we're announcing NVIDIA ACE Avatar Cloud Engine that is designed for animating to bringing a digital avatar to life. It has several characteristics, several capabilities: speech recognition, text-to-speech, natural language understanding, basically a large language model, and using the sound that you will be generating with your voice, animate the face. And using the sound and the expression that you're saying, animate your gestures. All of this is completely trained by AI. It is completely rendered with ray tracing. Everything is real time.
Hey Jen, how are you?
Unfortunately, not so good.
How come?
I am worried about the crime around here. It's gotten bad lately. My ramen shop got caught in the crossfire.
Can I help?
If you want to do something about this, I have heard rumors that the powerful crime lord Kuman Aoki is causing all sorts of chaos in the city. He may be the root of this violence.
I'll talk to him. Where can I find him?
I have heard he hangs out in the underground fight clubs on the city's east side. Try there.
Okay, I'll go.
Be careful, Kai.
None of that conversation was scripted. We gave that AI, this Jin AI character, a backstory. His story about his ramen shop and the story of this game. And all you have to do is go up and talk to this character. And because this character has been infused with artificial intelligence and large language models, it can interact with you, understand your meaning, and interact with you in a really reasonable way. All of the facial animation completely done by the AI. We have made it possible for all kinds of characters to be generated. They have their own domain knowledge. You can customize it, so everybody's game's different. And look how wonderfully beautiful they are and natural they are. This is the future of video games. This is the new computer industry. Software is no longer programmed just by computer engineers. Software is programmed by computer engineers working with AI supercomputers. These AI supercomputers are a new type of factory. It is very logical that a car industry has factories. They build things that you can see, cars. It is very logical that computer industry has computer factories. You build things that you can see, computers. In the future, every single major company will also have AI factories, and you will build and produce your company's intelligence. We are intelligence producers already. It's just that the intelligence producers, the intelligence are people. In the future, we will be intelligence producers, artificial intelligence producers. And every single company will have factories, and the factories will be built this way. This translates to your throughput. Well, just now, in the beginning, I showed you computer graphics. Well, it turns out that the friends we met at University of Toronto, Alex Krzyzewski and Suskever and Ilya Suskever and Jeff Hinton, they discovered the continuous scaling of artificial intelligence and deep learning networks and came up with the ChatGPT breakthrough. And the breakthrough, of course, is very, very, very clear, and I'm sure that everybody here has already tried ChatGPT. But the important thing is this: we now have a software capability to learn the structure of almost any information. We can learn the structure of text, sound, images, their structure in all of this, physics, proteins, DNA, chemicals. Anything that has structure, we can learn that language. And then the next breakthrough came, generative AI. Once you can learn the language, of certain information, then with control and guidance from another source of information that we call prompts, we can now guide the AI to generate information of all kinds. We can generate text to text, text to image, but the important thing is this: Information transformed to other information is now possible. Text to proteins, text to chemicals, images to 3D, video to video. So many different types of information can now be transformed. For the very first time in history, we can now apply the instrument of our industry to so many different fields that were impossible before. This is the reason why everybody is so excited. Let's take a look at what it can do. Here's a prompt, and this prompt says, "Hi, Computext. I'm here to tell you how wonderful stinky tofu is. You can enjoy it right here in Taiwan. It's best from the night market." I was just there the other night. Okay, play it.
Hi, Computex. I'm here to tell you about how wonderful stinky tofu is. You can enjoy it right here in Taiwan. It's best from the night market.
The only input was words. The output was that video. Okay, here's another prompt. "I am here at Computext. I will make you like me best. Sing it with me. I really like NVIDIA." Okay, so this is the word. These are the words. These are the words. And hey, voice mod, could you write me a song? These are the words. Okay, play it.
I am here at Computex. I will make you like me best. Yeah, sing it with me. I really like NVIDIA.
Okay, so obviously this is a very, very important new capability, and that's the reason why there's so many generative AI startups. We're working with some 1,600 generative AI startups. Just utterly incredible. There's no question that we're in a new computing era. You don't have to just AI, this generation, this computing era, does not need new applications. It can succeed with old applications, and it's going to have new applications. The rate of progress, because it's so easy to use, is the reason why it's growing so fast.
He goes on to show us some examples, like he speaks something and then it translates it into like 4 or 5 different languages with subtitles immediately. This is like a reversal of what happened at Babel. And so, you know, what the problems were at the beginning will be the problems at the end. And we're going back to that God finally said, enough, okay? You know, at the time of Noah, he intervened. At the time of Babel, he intervened. And Scripture tells us he's going to intervene again. I was thinking about this week. A couple months ago would have been my dad's 100th birthday if he was still alive. And so I started thinking back to what I remember him talking about his life was like when he was a child growing up. He was, in his preschool. He hadn't started school yet before the Depression really started. They didn't have a refrigerator. They had an ice truck that came around. And not everybody had a car back in those days. And he lived in a neighborhood, by the way, in Dayton, Ohio, which was around the corner from where a couple guys had a bicycle repair shop named the Wright brothers, who started flying, one of the first people to really develop flight. Bicycle guys. So you understand the technology progression that happened just in his neighborhood, in the area around his neighborhood. It was incredible. But not everybody's excited about this. This was some of the guys who had not come out to speak about the potential problems of AI, like Sam Altman and others. You heard the guy in the video talk about Jeff Hinton at ChatGPT. Jeff Hinton has come out and done many, many, many interviews saying that this thing's getting out of control. But what you should understand is it's not going to stop. They can issue these letters and threats here. This is what the statement on AI risk by the Center for AI Safety, and there's been 20, 30,000 people sign this letter. But look at what this is the basic statement. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. But one of the last screenshots in that video of the guy from NVIDIA he said there's 1,600 companies. And I just quickly scanned through the list. A lot of those are programs that I have. It's everywhere. It's not going back. He talked about the structure of proteins. I mentioned that. That was one of the most interesting parts of the 60 Minutes thing on AI about 2 months ago. The guy talked about proteins. They wanted to discover the 3D structure of proteins because when you've got the 3D structure, what can you do? You can figure out how to manipulate it, change it, alter it. It's the same thing that's going to happen with DNA. And he said, so Scott Pelley asked him, well, how long was it taking somebody to discover the 3D structure of a protein? And he said it would take a PhD. The rule of thumb was a PhD trained biologist would take him 5 years to get the 3D structure of one biological protein. It took us a couple years to figure out the thing, but once we figured it out, we did all 200 million in days. 200 million biological proteins. And so Scott Pelley goes, you mean you did 1 billion years of PhD scientist work in literally seconds? Yes. Now, when you translate all of that into what you read in Revelation 13, he gives life to the image of the beast. Do you think we're sort of getting to that stage or are at that stage? I mean, we always talk about the mark of the beast, right? But we haven't talked a lot about life to the image of the beast. And I remember, I'm pretty sure my dad, we had the discussion because we went to Disneyland in 1965 and we went to this Hall of Presidents and Abraham Lincoln got up and gave a speech. Now they all, the last time we went to Disney World, which was probably 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they had a whole bunch of presidents that got up and spoke, animated robots. Well, what can they do now? And how do you determine whether it's real? This is an article from Wired that came out about a month ago, our passwordless future, because we're all going to have a digital ID. OpenAI, they're saying we're not getting along too well with Europe because they want to regulate us. Yet he was one of the guys who put this letter together this past week finally and said this is an existential threat to humanity. At the same time, he's the guy who's got this company called WorldCoin Crypto Project. And if you want to get WorldCoin, all you got to do is look into the machine and let it scan your retina, your iris or whatever. So it's a scary world. Now I'm going to switch over to the environment for just a little bit because this is all tied into this too. This is a thing called the Sustainable Markets Initiative, Building a Sustainable Future. This is the brainchild of a guy now known as King Charles. He came out with the thing. You go to the British Museum, you can see the Magna Carta, one of the documents that sort of led to our freedom. He has a thing called the Terra Carta for nature, people, and planet. As part of the Sustainable Markets Initiative, the former Prince of Wales launched the Terra Carta in 2021, a mandate that puts sustainability at the heart of the private sector. Very slick. And companies are signing on. Here's Lloyd's, the great insurance company. Lloyd's is proud to support the Terra Carta from the Sustainable Markets Initiative. So on the one side, we have all of this diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have ESG, environment, social, and governments. And we have the sustainable markets thing, and they're all sort of interconnected. Now, I have a friend named Craig. Craig, I apologize if I get your form incorrect on Facebook, Rapture Watchers, I think it is. If you want a link to it, just email me at the church email address that you can find on our website, and I'll try to get it to you. He has just this, he did a great job of summarizing all of these things that are doing and how it ties into the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030. So I went back and I read through that. I thought it was very well. So I want to give him credit because he did a lot of work on it. And I'm not sure I agree with him on everything about the end times, but I agree that there's something going on here that we need to pay attention to, because all of these things seem to center around this environmental thing. So back in 2020, then Prince Charles went to the Davos, to the annual meeting in 2020, and he was introduced by Klaus Schwab, and at the end of his introduction, and you'll see a shadowy figure in front of the podium, that's Klaus Schwab sitting down. So I'm not going to play you Klaus Schwab, but I want you to look at the imagery, and there's a theory that some people have that, King Charles is the you-know-what, okay? So I'm just saying is, Jesus said there would be many in our time. So maybe he's one, and some say he is the one. So time will tell, I guess, on this. But look at the imagery of this. Now, the little things here are crowns, but look at the crown that they took the colors of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and they turned it into a crown above his head. Now, you could say, well, that's just an accident. Somebody was just joking around. But if you go to the terracotta, the Sustainable Markets Initiative, this is the page that Prince Charles put up, or now King Charles. And it has their vision, a sustainable future for nature, people, and planet. Mission to build a coordinated global effort to enable the private sector to accelerate the transition to a sustainable future. Action, the former Prince of Wales is gathering a global coalition of the willing who share the vision around the need to accelerate global progress towards a sustainable future. And this is the image that they chose to put up on the YouTube channel of the World Economic Forum. Like we have an image like the title slide. That's what they put up with regard to this video of his speech at the 2020 World Economic Forum. And those are the colors that represent the Sustainable Development Goals. Here is how am I doing on time? So look at this. I mean, these are videos that are put up, and you can go RETV, and you can find these. You can find these at the Sustainable Markets website. I'm not going to play the videos just because I don't really care for this guy, but here's a video that he gave at COP27 in Scotland a couple years ago.
As we tackle this crisis, our efforts cannot be a series of independent initiatives running in parallel. The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution based on radically transforming our current fossil fuel-based economy to one that is genuinely renewable and sustainable. So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector. With trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders, it offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition.
Okay, so there's another group called, what's this group called? Goals House. And so they have these meetings. So this is a pretty slick website. I like the graphics. And believe me, they're animated and they have videos in them and everything. And it's, by the way, there was in the connection with the NVIDIA video and some other AI videos that I looked at this week, they have these things now where you can download an app for your phone and use it like in a Zoom meeting. And so it rather than having your face in a camera, it turns it into a 3D. And it will actually move to the side and show you talking from the side. You don't have to do anything. You can't tell that it's not you turning your head to the side or the camera moving. We're way down the road on this. So they had this is Davos, then they have one in Cannes this month, and then they have one at the UN General Assembly in September, and then they have COP28 in the United Arab Emirates. And so this is their Goals House, one house, one mission. And what are they talking about? They have they're pushing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In March of this year, Antonio Guterres, the head of the UN, they had a big conference in New York about global shocks that are coming. Like they know there are global shocks coming. But listen, in some respects, everybody says, well, they're planning everything. Okay, but we also know that the Lord told us that these things were coming, and they would be like global shocks. So maybe they're planning it, maybe and they are planning some of it, but maybe some of the stuff is out of their control. One house, one mission. And but look at the two that are blown up: no poverty and climate action. And so that was sort of like the central core of everything that was talked about by Guterres. And then this is on their website, and this is kind of interesting dates: 2023 and 2030. And one of my talks in Scotland, I'm going to talk about maybe 2030. I talked about this in Calgary as well. You can go look at that talk at last day's Bible conference if you want. And I'm not going to tell you which one. I'm going to make you listen to all four of them to find, or maybe you find it in the second one or the third one. I don't remember which one it was in, to be honest with you. So listen to all of them. I'll torture you. But look at what they talk about. I love goals. Okay, they have this guy who's from the Freud's group. But then look at what they pull out. William Butler Yeats' poem, The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot bear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. This is an old poem. And why are these guys pushing this out at this time? I'll just read the rest of it. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles in my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. You know what's going to happen? Somebody's going to take this poem and use a prompt, and they're going to get an image from this. And I can almost hear people scrambling that are maybe listening to this. They're Googling it right now. How do I do that? And I bet I'll get a video this week. Let me do it myself. Real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born? Interesting. So this is back in March 9th of 2023. Secretary General Guterres launches Our Common Agenda, delivering on 2030 agenda promises, strengthening response to global shocks. We have 7 years to go. And they published a thing, a big publication, and it has all these different things in it. And what you'll see is that they sort of build on what had just happened and how it can be translated into global action. And they have here, what's the first one in the upper? Complex global shocks. Major climatic event. Look down here at the bottom. Major event in outer space. Event involving biological agents. Disruption to global flows of goods or people. Or food. Listen, we're in a drought here in Ohio. And it's significant. I work at a local golf course a couple days a week, and it's like the greatest golf conditions ever in the Central Ohio. I mean, it's just like the Memorial Tournament over in Dublin today. It's like Jack Nicklaus's dreams have come true. A dry, hard golf course that's in perfect condition. And it is, but I was talking to one of the landscapers last night. He was out on the golf course at 8 o'clock, and he's like, I shouldn't be out here working, but he said, I can't sleep because I got to come out and water at 8 o'clock at night to save the golf course. So there are all these events that are coming. Major event in outer space, unforeseen black swan event. And so they have this emergency platform that they come up with. And now what we see is we're seeing wildfires like all across Canada. When we were in Calgary, up in Alberta, way north of where we were, we saw one or two, I think, didn't we, Pam, in Saskatchewan? And you could see the fire burning. You could see the smoke from it 30 miles away. And of course, in Saskatchewan is kind of flat, so you can kind of see pretty, like an overpass on the highway, 20 miles away is like a mountain out there. The joke in Saskatchewan is that if your kid or your dog runs away, you can watch them leave for 4 days because it's so flat. But Quebec, and the smoke is affecting us. This is a map you can find on the internet about different wildfires. Look at some of these, like this is in the you can see in the lower, I had Sault Ste. Marie on here someplace. But you can see like they have the number of wildfires, 211, 264, 302, 453. Now that's over a period of time. The little look like fire things, those are current ones just in the last 24 hours. Here's northern Alberta in Canada. 567 wildfires, 402, 511. So this week, I'm taking this, the age of grace is over. Sort of in my little talk time here. So I'm going to play a little video. I want you to listen to a little bit of what he says about agriculture.
And just a little bit of consciousness should help anybody understand what the consequences of that could be over the next century. I'm not saying it's tomorrow or next week or the next 10 years, but it's steadily happening and it may be irreversible. That's the challenge. So here we are, 33% of emissions represented in this sort of gathering, and more in some ways because of transportation, because of heavy industry, because of all the other components of the food chain, literally food chain, supply chain. And so we have our work cut out for us. And as a consequence, This sector needs innovation now more than ever. We're facing record malnutrition at a time when agriculture, more than any other sector, is suffering from the impacts of the climate crisis. And I refuse to call it climate change anymore. It's not change, it's a crisis. We're beyond the concept of just change, and we can manage the change. And without action, millions of lives and livelihoods are going to be at risk. There are scientists who will tell you today that the probability of a large portion of Africa that is a huge food supplier to the continent could implode in terms of its agricultural capacity if we don't get control of what we're doing. 15 million people are dying every single...
Well, enough of that. But so what he talked about was we need to really come down on the agricultural sector. But what is going to replace it? People need to eat to live. And I don't think he cares. I really don't think he cares. So let me just talk real quickly about some things in Israel and Middle East. Hezbollah guy came out and said essentially that the elections in Lebanon are really about Hezbollah controlling things. Iran is supposedly arming a group in Syria to attack the U.S. And this is kind of an interesting thing. In fact, let me, I'll show you what sort of artificial intelligence can do here. If I can find the picture. I don't know if this is the picture or not. It is. So it's like I just was looking for three-dimensional pictures of the Holy Land yesterday, and this thing popped up. And it gives us you can sort of understand the elevation changes and all this other thing. But listen, a lot of things are happening in Israel, and it's going to be difficult. For example, this is a report from 2011. Israel's critical security requirements for defensible borders. And I'll explain a little bit more why I'm talking about this right now. That was 2011 when it initially came out. And it talked about, you see the orange post there? That's a Arab village in what's called the West Bank, Samaria in that case. But the picture on the cover of this report is what Tel Aviv looks like from that village. And what happens if these weapons continue to be smuggled in? And then there were these reports this week that, for example, leaked documents from an Israeli drill were telling people in the north, you need to get prepared. You need to get ready in case war breaks out with Hezbollah. They were passing these out in the north part of Israel. It says here, the paper includes instructions for a major war that will last for many days, including instructions for shelters that will be used in the event of a war. The document includes information about the nature of a war if it breaks out and that it would be very dangerous. You have to evacuate the settlement as quickly as possible. There will be a small window of time when it will probably be possible to evacuate, and then the roads will be closed. So you have to do that. And there was a security cabinet meeting in a couple days that's going to talk about what do we do about if we have a multi-front clash with Iran. They're getting ready for something. Now, whether it happens or not is anybody's case, but we know that Iran came out with another missile. This is from the demonstration launch, but look at what they have there on the right. What do you think their goal or their idea is? One can hope that somehow AI puts that into the targeting system of the missile, and it sort of solves a couple problems that we all have with how this end times thing is going to unfold. And maybe that's what happened with this drone situation that went around, because we've had all these videos, these movies out there like Skynet and others where computers turn against people. And maybe, so when AI's gathering all this information, maybe it downloads that into its thinking process. And the other thing to remember is that as much as they talk about artificial intelligence, they never mention wisdom, do they? The wisdom that we get is in the book. One more thing, this week there was an election that took place and Erdogan won, which is not a surprise. There's a pretty good article by Pepe Escobar. I don't agree with him. He's not my orientation. But people were noting things that happened at the inauguration of Erdogan. There's Maduro sitting there like this. Now, some people say, well, that's how Venezuelan Catholics pray. He's not a Muslim. I don't know. I'm just saying that that's what the picture shows. You also see the head of the Orthodox Church and the head of the Muslim Authority. They're one on the right, one on the left behind Erdogan at his inauguration. And you need to understand there's the symbols mean things. The position of people means things. And then at his last inauguration, they had dignitaries from 30 countries attended, and this year they had 78 countries. So let me just read a little bit from Jonathan Spires' great article in Friday's Jerusalem Post, and we'll finish up with this. Title of the article is Meet the New Boss, Same as the Old Boss. Yet the holdout position on Syria should offer a clue that it would be mistaken to expect a new Erdogan who will commit fully to an Abraham Accords-type view of the region. The Sunni Arab Islamist elements, who are his natural allies, are at present moment defeated everywhere in the Arab world. Indeed, there exists an unbroken crescent of defeat and containment for such forces beginning in Egypt. By the way, there was a shooting incident on the Egyptian-Israeli border last night, and 3 young Israeli soldiers were killed. I don't know all the factors about that, but it's a major tragedy. And some of the accolades coming in were that this young lady who was killed, who was 19, was just like the heart and soul of her unit. And it just breaks your heart to see this. Back to Jonathan Spire. Erdogan's pattern of behavior suggests a certain flexibility where economic or strategic necessity demands. He can agree to rapprochement, shift ground, and mend fences. But such moves should not be taken to indicate a profound and deep change. As the example of Syria shows, where the Sunni Islamist forces he naturally favors remain an option, he will find a way to get to them. And should forces once again rise to greater consequence in the region, it may be assumed he will seek once again to champion and assist their cause. Reports of his transformation have been much exaggerated. Those whom the Turkish leader is currently courting should take note. And remember, I showed you that graphic of what he put out in response to Trump saying we're moving the embassy to Jerusalem. He put out a thing about we need to take care of the Jerusalem issue. But he also put out a map in one of his papers that had tanks and aircraft and everything surrounding Israel from all the Islamic countries. That's the guy. And so now everybody's going to say, oh, he's going to be great. But listen, Turkey's in kind of a bit of ascendancy. They sit at a very important place in the. They sort of control the Black Sea. You see Turkey here on the left, and you see that narrow opening to the Black Sea that Turkey controls. A lot of food from Ukraine comes through there. Look, the food situation is going to be rough this year, in my opinion. Ukrainian food's not going to get out. And I'll have more comments about the Ukraine war in a future update. But the world is going to be full of wars and rumors of wars till the Lord returns. You just need to accept that. So look, let's pray. Batten down the hatches. Be careful. This artificial intelligence thing concerns me, and it's tied into transhumanism and altering proteins and DNA and that type of thing, which is concerning. So anyway, let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for your word. Thank you so much for the blessing that you gave us to explain to us the time that we live in, that we should be, like you told the early disciples, we should be grateful that we live in a time that the prophets spoke about. Just like they were to be grateful for the time they lived in, which is the time that the prophets spoke about. Just pray you will help us always keep that in mind. Always help us keep in mind our obligation to be in the Word, studying and sharing the gospel with those around us. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.